Morning, Morai Rabotai. We are continuing on Masechet Avodah Zarah, and we are holding on Daf Yud Ched Amud Aleph, the first wide line. Today's limud is been dedicated L'Schud Yehoshua ben Diana, Yael bat Rivka, Menashe ben Asi. His Amud is also being learned Leilui Nishmat Zipporah bat Yitzchak. Now we are in the middle of the story of Rabbi Chanina ben Tradion, the unfortunate fate of one of the Asara Harugei Malchut, and we spoke about the beginning half of the story, how he went to Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma. Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma was the Gadol Ador, and he actually objected to what he was doing. He said, Shamati alecha, I heard that you're Makir Keilot Barabim, you're teaching Torah publicly. Don't you know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given this Ummah, this nation, the power to destroy Beit HaMikdash and to destroy Am Yisrael and kill Gedolei Torah? And still they're standing. That must be that is Min HaShamayim. And you should really be hiding and not publicly going against their takanot and their decrees. And he said, Min HaShamayim Yirachamu. And that kind of like upset Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma. He said, I'm telling you Devarim shel Tam. V'ata omer min hashamayim yirachamu. Said, I will be surprised, Tamea ani, if they wouldn't take you and they wouldn't wrap you in that Sefer Torah that you're holding in your lap and they would set you on fire. So he said, now the Gemara starts from the first wide line over here. Amru lo ayu yamim muatim. This was, of course, the last sickness of Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma, the Gadol Ador. At sheniftar Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma, he passed away. V'halchu kol gedolei Romi. All of the great officials of the Roman government also went to the funeral. V'yispidu hesped gadol. They eulogized him tremendously. Ubechazaratan metzauhu. And on their way back, now that they're going through the Jewish quarters, on their way back, they see Rabbi Chanina ben Tradion Shaya Yosef. He was sitting ve'osek b'Torah, and he was learning Torah. Umakil keilot barabim, and he was gathering people to teach them Torah. Ve'sefer Torah munach lo beheko, and he's holding a Sefer Torah. Heviuhu, they brought him and they sentenced him to death. Now we already learned the sentencing story in the previous daf, right? When he was with his friend and he said, "You're gonna be nitzol, you're not gonna be nitzol." Rabbi Chanina ben Tradion told him that he himself kind of like knew. He said, "I'm going to be not getting out of here because I don't have the zchut of chesed." You remember that story? Now here it skips the whole trial process. It just says, "Heviu," they brought him, and the actual execution, the actual killing, the decree was karchu beSefer Torah. That Sefer Torah that he had in his lap, they wrapped it around him. Vehikifu bechavilei zemorot. They set around where he was sitting or standing, chavilei zemorot, bundles of wood. Veisitu bahen et ha'ur, and they set them on fire. Now you have an extreme heat of fire right around him all over, but he's not on fire. So, but it's a slow killing, and even to make it harder, they brought heviu sefugin shel semer. They brought bundles of wool soaked with water. Shraum b'mayim ve'inichum alibo. They put it on his chest. This way, he would not die quick. It would not be catching on fire, so he would be suffering to death, a torture's death. So says the Gemara, that he shouldn't die quick. Amra lo bito, his daughter sees that this is happening. He says, Abba, eracha bekach, I'm going to see you like this. Woe to me that I'm seeing you like this, with this type of isurim. Amalah, he says to her, Ilmale ani nisrafti levadi. If I was burning alone, haya adavar kasheli. It would be difficult for me. Achshav shani nisraf veSefer Torah imi. Now that I am being burnt and the Sefer Torah is with me, Mi shemebakesh elbona shel Sefer Torah, the one that is going to demand the disrespect of the Torah, the one that's going to revenge and avenge the kavod of the Torah, hu yebakesh elbona, he's going to avenge my disgrace and death as well. Amru lo talmidav, his students say, Rabbi, ma taroeh. He felt he's seeing something, hearing something. He said, what do you see? What these are fateful moments. Amar lahen, he tells them, Gilyonin nisrafim ve'otiot porchot. I see that only the parchments are being burnt, but otiot, the letters of the content of the Torah, is flying away. Of course, this is the concept that the Pachad Yitzchak, the Rav Hutner discusses this in a Maimar that he wrote on Shavuot, that you have the guf of the Sefer Torah and the neshama of the Sefer Torah. The content is the neshama of the Sefer Torah, and again, his body, he says that really corresponds to our guf and neshama. Therefore, for instance, for Luchot Rishonot, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave the first tablets, Klal Yisrael was on a high level of Adam HaRishon before the sin, Paskazu Amatan. Therefore, the neshama was dominant, and hence they were learning and not forgetting. Because the neshama never forgets, and if the neshama is dominant, you'll never forget. And you also will never die, because the neshama never dies. And if the guf is subordinate completely, batel to the neshama, then a person will never, then paskazu amatan. They were supposed to become like Adam HaRishon before the chet, who was not supposed to die. Right? And the Sefer Torah also was like that. Therefore, the otiot were chakukot in the luchot, right? They were chakuk ala luchot. Michtav Elogim, Chakuga, they were the same thing as the Luchot. There was not two different separate entities. And when Moshe Rabbeinu, when he broke the Luchot, it says the Otiot Parchu Ba'avir, the same thing as this. And says the Pachad Yitzchak, that means that at that moment, when they did the Egel, they now separated between their neshama and their guf. Their guf became once again the dominant force, just like Adam HaRishon sinned. It's a dat, and now also the Sefer Torah corresponding to that became guf and neshama of the otiot being separate than the klaf. So here is very much the same, that he's perhaps in a deeper sense referencing that his guf is being burnt, but the otiot, the neshama kedosha, is flying to olam haba. Afatah ptach picha, the talmidim. You have this, the similarity here, and the Gemara in Masechet Brachot that we had in Daf Samech Aleph, when Rabbi Akiva was tortured, with another one of the Asara Harugei Malchut, he was tortured and his flesh was combed with iron combs, and the Talmidim were saying, Rabbeinu at Khan, until here he still was saying Shema calmly, and they were surprised. Here also the Talmidim were surprised. How can you take so much Yisurim, so much pain? They told him, P'tach picha, open your mouth, let the fire take a hold of you and just go. Don't suffer like this. Let yourself be killed easier and faster. So Amar Lahen, he says to them, this is breathtaking. Mutav sheiteleh lami shenetana. I don't want to affect my life, even those chayei sha'ah, few moments that's going to make a difference. It's best that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who gave the neshama, should take it, ve'al yechabelhu be'atzmo, and a person should not damage his body, his life, himself. Now, this is actually very interesting, because this becomes a platform of discussion for a very modern day halachic question of end-of-life questions, of a person prolonging life or shortening life when this life is not really a viable one. Sometimes you could cure something, you could accomplish a proper cure. Sometimes you can't really do that. It's just a matter of a few days, a few weeks. It's what we call chayei sha'ah. And whether or not a person is obligated to prolong a life like that, whether or not a person could just stand by and let things take their own course, is a very difficult question. It has been debated And this is really like questions of, these are life and death questions, which you're talking about questions of Ritzicha. Rav Moshe Feinstein famously was extremely adamant that the person cannot pull the plug and so on. That the Ben Ish Chai in a Tshuva in Rav Pe'alim writes about this as well, which took the attention of Rav Moshe Feinstein in a very significant way. Not the time for the back and forth. And this is something that has been debated already from previous generations, and still to this day is going to be something that's not clear for everyone, and needs to be paskined and discussed in every single case by itself with one of the Gdolei Poskim, one of the people who are Morei Horaot Israel. And these are not things that you just decide, okay, DNR, DNT, let's do it, and so on. Things that have to be discussed. Rahman al-Islam, when he comes, Nogea, and Rav Moshe Feinstein, one of the things that he discusses here, he writes that, based on the Tosafot in Chulin and so on, he holds that shortening a life, even by moments, is a Retzicha. Rav Moshe Feinstein is very adamant that is considered Retzicha. He also discusses this question of abortion in Halacha. At what point exactly is considered killing? At what point life in womb is considered life is also a very unclear. Both ethical committees of the non-Jewish world debate this, of the pro-life or so-called euphemism of pro-choice, and at what point you draw the line is something that is very questionable, not just in the non-Jewish world, but lavdil alf avdalot, in the Jewish world. Rav Moshe Feinstein is of the opinion that it's always asur, and it's not just asur; it's considered tzicha. Even it's
proactively, right?
So that that's what we're discussing. So if you pull the plug, you proactively kill someone. But so are you now mechuyav to prolong the life also when you can, or can you maybe just b'shev al ta'aseh, let it go? So that becomes a question which, if it involves pain, doesn't involve pain. Rav Moshe Feinstein at some point holds that it will be asur to even touch it, let it be. But again, these are difficult questions. Now, one of the fundamental Gemaras that Rav Moshe Feinstein struggles with is this Gemara, Avodah Zarah daf Yud Ches. So wait a second. How in the world was mutar for Rav Chanina ben Tradion to do what he's going to do in just a moment? Listen to what happened. It says the Gemara. There was a guy there, a Roman official that was in charge of seeing to it that he dies and he's killed. Amar lo Klastoniri, this Roman official told Rabbi Chanina ben Tradion, Rabbi, he was so taken perhaps by the strength of character of Rabbi Chanina ben Tradion and the whole thing, everything that was happening. Again, we spoke many times about when you have something of Kedusha, it affects everything that's surrounding it. We spoke about Shmuel HaNavi, when the troops of Shaul come to take David from him, and they all do tshuva, and they're changed people, and they join the yeshiva. One troop, the second one, the third one, Shaul himself comes. We spoke about this. And perhaps the Kedusha that was going on over here, and just the strength of character, took this person, and he says the following. He says, Rabbi, Imani marbe b'shalhevet, if I fasten this process, if I hasten your death and diminish the surim that you're going through, go against my orders, so to speak. Marbe b'shalhevet v'notel sifugin shel tzemer mal libecha. I take these bundles of tzemer, of wet wool, from your chest, and just higher the level of the heat of fire, and you'll go quick. Would you promise me that I will have olam haba? Right? Says Rabbi Chanina ben Tradion, Amar lohen. He says yes. He shavali. Swear, will you swear to me? Nishbalo, he did. Miyat hirpa b'shalhevet. Immediately he increased the fire. V'natas fugin shel semer ma'alibo. He took the wool off his body. V'yatz'a nishmato b'mera. And he quickly died. Afu kafatz. Now this is not the end. This Klastoniri, the Roman official, he jumps into this fire and he burns himself also with Rabbi Chanina ben Tradion. V'nafal letoch ha'ur, yatz'a bat kol, a heavenly voice comes out. Ve'amra, this is the third time we're having it in our sugya. Rabbi Chanina ben Tradion v'Klastorini mezumanin l'chayei ha'olam haba. Both of them are mezumanin l'chayei ha'olam haba. We already mentioned before the Savodi Masechet Ketuvot Daf Kuf Gimal that he says, when he says mezumanin l'chayei ha'olam haba, means belo din ubelo yisurim, straight ticket to olam haba. And from the fact that he equates them together, it seems like, the Klastoniri is all the way up there with wherever Reb Chanina ben Tradion is. Now, that's a tremendous thing. Rebbe, when he heard this, Bacha Rebbe, says the Gemara, Ve'amar, and he said, Yesh koneh olamo b'sha'a echad, v'yesh koneh olamo b'kama shanim. There is a person that gains his olam haba in sha'a echad, with one decision, with one act. V'yesh koneh olamo b'kama shanim. And look at Rabbi Chanina ben Tradion, he was a chacham, his whole life was a tzaddik yesod olam, one of the asara rugei malchut. And he worked a lifetime for what he got. And this Klastoniri, which perhaps right beforehand was en lo helek l'olam haba, he was a arel, a goy like any other one. And yet, b'sha'a achad, he gained his olam haba. Rabbi cried. Now, they say, in the name of Baalei Musar, Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, of course, writes about this in Sichot Musar at length, that perhaps a person has a sha'a achad of their own. A person could have these sha'a achad in life. There will be moments that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives that, if you used one moment, one decision, and you become this, can you imagine how many of these you could have throughout your life? How much a person that actually accomplishes, right? We mentioned that a person, 95% minimum of the actions that the person does during the course of the day is unconscious or subconscious. But when a person takes a hold of their life, b'sha'a echat, you could gain olam haba. And other Baalei Musar say the reason Rebbe cried was, you never know when that sha'a echat comes, because everybody is going to have a sha'a echat that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives them, that you could gain your olam haba with that one thing, right? We had K'tiyah bar Shalom, the first case that gave all of his nechasim to Rabbi Akiva, and he stood for the Jews. He stuck out for their case, and he was killed because he won over the emperor that wanted to kill the Jews. Right? That's the first time that they had a bat kol. K'tiyah bar Shalom mezuman l'chayei ha'olam haba. Elazar ben Durdaya was the second one, a moment of pure tshuva, whereas he spent his whole life with horrible things. And here is the Klastoriri, that is mezuman l'chayei ha'olam haba, with one tshuva, one little thing, one little decision that he made to ease the pain of Rabbi Chanina ben Tradion, and that would have been enough to bring him to olam haba. Maybe he would not be mezuman like that. He jumped and he gave. He was moser nefesh mezuman l'chayei olam haba. So that's a tremendous musar point, that a person with one decision, you never know when that decision is. You never know when your mesirut nefesh is. It could be a small, subtle point. It could be one low moment in a person's life. As we mentioned before, Zohar HaKadosh says something amazing about David HaMelech. David HaMelech asked that he should be the regel haraviya of Merkava. He should be the fourth one. Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, David. Hashem said, it's not easy. You know how many times I tested the Avod, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. You think it's easy? And I said, no, test me. Hashem said, you sure? I'm going to even tell you what your test is going to be. Your test is going to be in the area of morality. And we all know that even though the Gemara says, Kol ha'omer David chata'e ela to'eh, but he failed in the test of Bathsheba. So when did David HaMelech become David Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kayam? He became regular Revi. We have 3 tefillot, Keneged Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and we have the Tikkun Chasod Keneged David. The 4th one is always David. When did that happen? That happened in the lowest moment of David HaMelech's life. Yesh koneh olamo b'sha'ah achat. You talk about that. When he was kicked out of his palace with bizionot, with disgrace. His own son, Avshalom, is coming to kill him. Literally had to run for his dear life barefoot from the palace with a few friends. And his wives were publicly, openly in the balcony of the palace violated by his own son. Can you imagine? And his Rebbe Shimon ben Gra comes and he curses him, Klala Nimreset. You can't get lower than that. And he was minutes away from his death. Had Avshalom listened to Achitophel. And those moments, when he cursed him, Shimi ben Gra, he was Chayav Mita. Shimi ben Gra was Chayav Mita. And Yoav ben Tzruya, the head of the army of David HaMelech, wanted to kill him. He said, let me kill this dog. And David HaMelech said those words that should resonate forever in a person's ear. He said, no, Hashem Amar Lo Kalil. It's not him. It's not him, it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Let him do it. Hashem wants me to go through this right now. Yes, he's going to be Hayav Mita. But Hashem Amar Lo Kalil. And those are the moments, says the Zohar HaKadosh, that he became David Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kayam. Yesh koneh olamo b'sha'ach. You never know when that moment is. And that's why Bach Harabi, it's a scary thing. At the same time, it's so empowering and so powerful. And Be'ezrat Hashem, the rest of what happened with the daughter of Rabbi Charina ben Tradion is another fantastic story. Is really she was the sister-in-law of Rabbi Meir Balanes. Rabbi Meir married another daughter of Rabbi Hanina ben Tradion, Beruria, the famous Beruria, and her story and how she died, the mysterious death of Beruria, and the story of this daughter, the sister of Beruria, being put into Kubash el Zonot, and how she got out of it miraculously, is the story that Be'ezrat Hashem will discuss tomorrow. Baruch Elotin Hayim.